Game week, Lexington, Kentucky, 3 o'clock, Saturday on the SEC Network. Glad you could join us today. We're going to do a little wrap up of this weekend's 51-35 loss to Florida and the moments that kind of were the pinnacle of that game that you need to pay attention to that you might not notice or might not have noticed. We're going to do our first look at Kentucky. And in the third segment, we're going to do lines in the SEC. So stick around for that. But first, follow me on Twitter at @TheStephenWillis. Like me on Facebook at Positively Ole Miss, Facebook.com/POMcast, Facebook page and group. Subscribe on YouTube, Positively Ole Miss. Hit the bell for notifications. Follow us on Twitch, Positively Ole Miss, all one word. You can also listen on a plethora of podcatchers out there: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud. Tune in, and we're waiting on, I believe, iHeartRadio and Pandora to go along. We're basically wherever you are already, we are there as well. So no need to go to a second location, no need to ever send in money. So thank you very much for listening. And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to put a bow on the Florida game, and we're going to talk about the moments that you might not have noticed that really turned that game. And a lot of people are going to focus on positions or, obvious stuff. But this is, we'll go to number one. 3rd and 19. Yeah, and this is weird. 3rd and 19. Matt Corral completes the pass to Elijah Moore, gets the first down. Why is that one of the moments? Well, that kind of got him over his mental hurdle. He threw the ball into the ground the previous series. He made a bad throw to John Rice Plumlee on a deep ball. He was in his own head. It was the moment where the game could have been last year's Memphis and not this year's Florida, if that makes sense. That happened there. So Matt Corral completes that pass, completes the deep ball to Dontario Drummond, and was a completely different quarterback the rest of the game because he was able to relax. So the important thing that we need to learn from this is we need to keep the quarterback in a place where, he can do it. He can be overconfident because mentally he can get himself down to a position where he's not very good. We've seen that. But he was excellent Saturday, and it all started on that 3rd and 19 completion to Elijah Moore that led to a touchdown. He ended up with 395 yards passing on the day on 22 of 31 passing. The team as a whole passed for 445. They also ran for about 150-ish. Ran the ball probably 60-40 in the game. So it's a good look. If you watch the game, it went down exactly how we told you it would. We told you that we had to run double moves and throw deep routes against this defense to expand that 15-yard rectangle that they want to defend. If they can defend 25 or 35, it's advantage offense. And we really turned around those two safeties. That targeting call was pretty huge. So that's a moment of the game that we kind of stood up. It was important. The second one is Florida gets the ball midway through the second quarter, 14-14. At that point, we had run 38 plays. Florida gets the ball, scores 3 touchdowns, including the first drive of the second half, and the Ole Miss offense has 4 snaps for the rest of it. That's the point where the tempo of the game changed. We were dictating to that point. We were forcing Florida to play our game at that point. Dan Mullen was really quite smart and just started going methodically and playing time of possession and trying to shorten the game. And the result was 3 drives, 3 touchdowns, 4 plays for Ole Miss, and the game essentially was over. So credit where credit is due. Credit where credit is due. That was a genius coaching move by Dan Mullen in the first half of that game and completely turned it around. It went from, I think, 14-14 to 35-14 in a span of about 7.5 minutes of game time. That is the point of the game where it turned on its head. So, kind of similar to last year against Alabama, honestly. We just fell apart in the second quarter. But we're a young team. Remember, there's no spring. There's no fall camp. We're still learning personnel. The coaches don't really know the players. The decision-making they would make was about with 40-plus hours more film, where they could judge their performance on the field in a complete manner. I mean, coaches are notoriously slow decision makers. And I mean, it shows in week 1. And 3, I'm telling you, the loss of Otis Reese hurt. And in my opinion, Otis Reese was playing the Dalen Gill, Jay Stanley position on defense. He was the other linchpin of that defense that just wasn't there. They did not have a great day defensively. They did not have a great day defensively. And that's okay. That's okay. Good. This is all part of the growth. This is all part of the install. And if you look at Lane Kiffin's previous season openers in FAU, all losses, lost to both top 5 teams and Navy, got blown out a lot. So we'll catch you next segment. POMcast, Stephen Willis. Stick around.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen. As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop.
Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
All right, we're back. POMcast, Stephen Willis on this Monday. What is it, September 28th, I think? September 28th? October, right around the corner, right here at Positively Ole Miss. Thanks for tuning in. We're going to take our first look at Kentucky. The Wildcats in Lexington. They played this weekend against Auburn and lost 29-13. They lost by the same margin as Ole Miss, I believe. And the first impression of that game is Auburn's defense is not what Auburn's defense was. Now, they're still good. I mean, they're good, but they're not dominant like they were last year. And we need to keep that in mind. Terry Wilson threw for 239 yards, a touchdown and a pick on 24-37 passing. They ran the ball for 145 yards on 40 carries. And it does not look like they have a deep threat. If you listen to our preview that I did a couple of weeks ago, that was a concern with Kentucky, is that they did not have the ability to force other teams to not play in that 15-yard box on defense. There's nothing to stretch them out. So eventually teams would suffocate the run and safeties would be pronounced coming downhill because they don't have to worry about going over the shoulder. Obviously, if Ole Miss was playing Auburn, that'd be a different thing. They'd have to keep their head on a swivel. But against Auburn safeties were not needed to do that. I mean, Cavassier Smoke had a 35-yard touchdown. So if you take that out, 39 carries, 110 yards. Less than 3 yards a carry. So Kentucky has a little bit of identity searching they need to do. And probably they are doing. And every team is making jumps between week 1 and week 2. I mean, that's just happened. After watching Ole Miss and Florida, they're probably thinking they can throw the ball around a little bit with Terry Wilson. That would be a mistake, in my opinion, and a break from their identity. And when it comes to their strength is going to be on those offensive and defensive line, both of the trenches. By the way, I'll say this. I forgot to say it in the first segment. The offensive line performed admirably in the first game of the year. Allowing Matt Corral to take that many shots downfield required a bunch of protection. So that needs to be noticed. That was a surprise. So with Kentucky's defensive and offensive line, I expect them to throw the ball down the field a little bit, but they shouldn't do that. But everybody wants to talk about Ole Miss's defense against the run, and Kentucky ran for 196 yards, about 5 yards a carry. But take away a 50-yard run, they're under 150 and 28 carries. So, and a lot happened after this happened, and they were doing it with, former 5-star players, I believe. So it's just worth pointing out that there's going to be a jump defensively between of Ole Miss week 1 to week 2. All teams are doing it, not saying anything special, but there's going to be a larger than normal jump between week 1 and week 2. There's going to be a larger jump between week 2 and week 3. That's just because the decision making is catching up with the lack of time on the field that they have. Once they get the right people in the right places, which is what's happening, you can kind of go. You saw that live action with Navy this year. They really struggled against BYU against the run. They messed up not tackling the ball. They struggled the first half against Tulane in the second game, and then the second half they were dominant. They got it fixed. It was a mark of a good coach. And we have good coaches. Best staff probably that has ever been at Ole Miss on paper. So let them work. Now, Terry Wilson is not Kyle Trask. There's no Kyle Pitts on that other team, and they do not have a deep threat. So what we have in store for us this week is a little bit more beneficial to a young Ole Miss defense trying to pick up a new defense. And what does that mean? That means, well, Kentucky is probably going to simplify. I'm expecting them to simplify. And by doing that, the team is built to stop the run. Now, remember last year, most of the game they played it at a 3-4, if you noticed that as well. 3-man front against Florida. But that was because Florida was a passing team. I expect a 4-man front set up against Kentucky. And you're going to get hot takes from the Oxford echo chamber and all that talking about they switch from a 3-4 to a 4-3. No, it's just they make the decision based on the personnel they're facing. Understand that. If they're going against a drop back passer, they want to have 8 people in coverage sometimes. So a 3-man front is beneficial. Playing against a power run team, they might decide to play a 3-man front and put a 5-man across the line, or they could go 4. We have options. But the important thing is we don't really, during the install, we don't get ahead of our skis per se, but we also don't dumb down the defense to where it's overly simple. We need to have the normal progression of a defense throughout the season and fall camp and in spring practice. Right now, we are probably, if this was a real season, we're at the level a week or two in fall camp. We're almost to game week. So you can expect week 1 of game week in about 2 or 3 weeks, probably after the Alabama game, is the way it would normally line up. You would have the normal number of reps. And that's important. That's something people need to realize. You know, whenever we hit over and over the lack of spring, lack of fall camp, that's where we're pointing to. Week 1 is like week 4 or 5 this year, to the point where reps catch up to where they normally are, to where it looks like it's supposed to. And then you take in the COVID situation where we lost half of our secondary for probably 2 weeks during fall practice. So now you're looking at a secondary that has starters out there that are probably 2, maximum 3 weeks of practice time in a brand new system. Brand new language, brand new defense. It's no wonder Kyle Trask threw for 400 yards. I mean, Dean Leonard got cleared and played against Florida. Thank you, SEC, for doing your job. I think on Friday, he was on service team all week and then pressed into game action. So he'll be better this week. But you just did a disservice on that student athlete. So I expect Ole Miss and Kentucky. I'm going to, I'm going to take Kentucky as a 50-50 game. I think I did that in the preview. I think this one could go either way. I think there's going to be a jump on both sides. But what we've noticed is you need that confidence builder on Matt Corral. Hopefully this new staff is there because they don't know everything about personnel, because it could go sideways pretty quick. But with John Rice right behind him, that maybe that will motivate him as well. I think people are trying in that quarterback competition to I I don't know what they're doing, but it's a disservice to JRP. You need to really kind of run the same offense. You need to Cliff Kingsbury, Johnny Manziel, and Kyler Murray, somebody like John Rice Plumlee. Just heads up. You can't be predictable. And they were borderline predictable Saturday. So they'll pick that up in self-scout. But I expect Kentucky to try and take advantage of our secondary, which will be better this week. It absolutely will. The COVID situation, the Dean Leonard situation, if Otis Reese would be cleared, that'd be a different thing altogether. And all of a sudden, all 5 defensive backs working at full strength can go. Remember, we have the transfer of Jacob Springer, who will be here next year, who will play as well. And that's pieces that we can put into this secondary, even though the eligibility clock doesn't happen, to improve it in certain points. All of a sudden, you've got Otis Reese, Jacob Springer, Dean Leonard. There's a lot that can come blitz from. Because as you saw this weekend, DJ Durkin likes to blitz and call defenses from different angles. He just does. Anyway, segment 2 in the books. POMcast, Stephen Willis, come back and join us. Lines up next.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida's trusted choice independent insurance agents.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis. I just want you to stick around a little longer. We're going to get back to the podcast right after these messages.
Tonight, nearly 40,000 veterans across the country are homeless. These men and women have pledged to serve our nation, and now we must serve them. Landlords across the country have helped make significant progress in reducing veteran homelessness by making housing available, but there is more that we can do to bring our veterans home. Visit www.va.gov/homeless to see how you can get involved. And if you are a veteran and you are experiencing homelessness, please call 877-4AID-VET. Thank you.
All right, POMcast, last segment of the day. Thanks for listening. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at @TheStephenWillis. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast, POMcast. Join our Facebook group as well at Positively Ole Miss. YouTube, subscribe, Positively Ole Miss. Hit the bell for updates. And join our Twitch channel. Thank you so much for joining us. The numbers this weekend were just honestly off the charts. Thank you very much. And we're going to try and keep it bite-sized for you so you can just listen, move on about your day. We don't want a post-game show to go too long. I mean, we're going to try and keep them around 15 minutes. We hit the hot points. We're trying to keep the main podcast at under 30 minutes. You can go out for a single walk or something. You can walk over 1.5 miles and hear the whole podcast. So thank you very much for making us a part of your day on Saturday. And we will try like heck to tell you what you need to know and give you back as much time as possible. Thank you again. So let's do betting lines for the SEC this week, and you're dealing with kind of like I said, a COVID thing. If you're gambling on these games with the jumps that goes from week 1 to week 2, easy money is to be made at the beginning, but it's going to get kind of wonky in the middle. Tennessee is a favorite over Missouri by 10 points. Missouri getting 10 points on the road at Tennessee. They covered against Alabama this weekend. Missouri, I mean. And, I mean, that's something. They did cover, but they're getting 10 points on the road. Texas A&M is a 17-point dog at home. No, on the road, they're a 17-point dog to Alabama. Ole Miss, 7-point dog to Kentucky on the road. Auburn, 6.5-point dog to Georgia. LSU, 20-point favorite over Vanderbilt, and Mississippi State favored by 17.5 over Arkansas. So that's the SEC lines this week. Now, what I want to talk about is LSU, because this week it was obvious that they have a defense problem that is masked only by their offense problem, and they have lots to work on, and it's worth watching because this is not 2019 LSU. State really took it to them running shallow crossing routes. That's really all they did. They let LSU get in man coverage and just let them chase them across the field. And they don't have a lot of depth because of the opt-outs and the early withdrawals. I think 62 scholarship players are at LSU. They have a problem, and Vanderbilt lost 17-12 on the road at Texas A&M this weekend. They're better than can be expected, than was expected. It's worth paying attention to. I think that Mississippi State LSU game was more of an indictment on LSU than any sort of confirmation on Mississippi State. LSU wasn't ready to play, and now they're going to do the thing where they struggle and just sling things against the wall and try and find something that works. I've seen this at Ole Miss. I've seen that game. That exact game. I've seen that at Ole Miss. And I think we need to be prepared for it to snowball a little bit. Now, Arkansas, I think, is better than what they showed against Georgia. And Georgia is the best defense in the SEC. I think Felipe Franks will make a jump. I like Kendall Briles as an offensive coordinator. They're going to beat somebody that they're not supposed to beat, I think. I like their operation after watching all the SEC games, except for really Alabama. Jalen Waddle was special, by the way. I turned it off after 21-0 and started watching Vanderbilt, Texas A&M because that was more intriguing. Tennessee at South Carolina was very intriguing. That was a fun game. I actually really enjoyed this weekend of college football because, the SEC is back, obviously, but there's some intriguing storylines developing, and I want to watch the next couple of weeks to make sure that they're there before I start talking about it with you. But there are some things there that we need to follow. And like I said, I'm not going to make a big deal out of them now because I'm not sure it's a trend or just a fluke occurrence. But they are there. So, Kentucky Week, where this has been the POMcast. Thank you for listening. I'm your host, Stephen Willis. Have a nice day.